Mind like water is a metaphor used in martial arts, where the artist must react to changing circumstances in combat and then return to a waiting state. Mind like water has been popularized by David Allen's Getting Things Done productivity system, and it's where your mind is clear and not split in different directions, head buzzing with all the things that you need to do, have to do, should do, and keeping track of all the new stuff that flies in at you all day long, like emails, interoffice messages, meetings, clients, etc. He uses the analogy of a calm pond. Imagine tossing a pebble into that pond. Then imagine tossing a boulder into that same pond. How does the water react to either one? Totally appropriately for the force and mass of what's been tossed into it. It doesn't overreact or underreact, and then it returns to calm again. So what on earth does mind like water mean for you? Like the pond analogy, a mind that's untroubled with all the inputs of a workday is free to respond to the demands of the task in front of you and giving you heightened levels of creativity before returning to a state of calm again once done. You're free of those inputs because they're all stored away safely for later review. Having everything in its place empties your mind of busyness and junk and creates a sense of calmness and space and allows you to be ready for anything that comes your way. Now, I'm not selling the idea of creating a still mind. That's not what this is about. It's about getting into a state of mind known as the zone as often as you can, so you can get the maximum amount of stuff done. It's where you're so focused on what you're doing that you can accomplish a great deal of stuff. You know those times where the time just flies by and you got a ton of stuff done? Yeah, that's the zone. And you can't work at your best if you're distracted by all sorts of things flying at you. You need a system that allows you to manage all of those things as they come at you. Imagine you're humming along on a project when you suddenly remember that you're out of toilet paper at home. This thought is a pebble. How do you respond? If you choose to ignore it, guess what that pebble is going to do? It's going to continue to intrude on your work in various ways until you take care of it. Now, you're not going to jump up from your desk, grab your coat, and run to the store to buy toilet paper either. That might be an overreaction. You need to find the right level of response so you can quickly deal with that distraction and get back to what you were doing. In this example, you can make a note to pick up the toilet paper on your way home from work. Put it in a place where you know you'll see it and take care of it at that time. Your brain then relaxes or returns to calm, and you can continue working on the task in front of you. A mind like water state is the best place for optimum productivity. It allows you to respond appropriately to distractions, big and small, before returning your attention back to what you were doing in the first place. So, what are we really talking about here? We're talking about clearing your mind, getting all that superfluous stuff out of your head, all those mental to-do lists and other inputs that float around and show up when you least want or need them to. It's creating a system that allows you to capture everything, a safe place so you can focus and experience calm control. So let's talk a bit about a concept called your second brain and how it'll help you create your mind like water. Your second brain, simplified, is where you record all of your tasks and commitments. Every single thing that you haven't done yet and plan to do, regardless of whether you plan to do it today, tomorrow, next week, or maybe someday. Yeah, we're talking about a task management system, a to-do list, a task list, whatever you call it. It can be a digital document, a spreadsheet, an app, even a good old notebook. Somewhere, anywhere that you can capture any ideas or tasks or commitments. You need to have something that allows you to safely store all the things you're not doing right now. The idea here is to get them out of your head. And you need your second brain because you don't want to use your regular brain to store information. It's not what it's designed for, and it's not very good at doing it anyway. Your brain is for having ideas, not holding them. So let's explore the CORD model of productivity as a way of not just storing your ideas, tasks, and commitments, but creating a system that takes them through to completion. This model comes from the book, How to Be a Productivity Ninja, and we're going to be doing a very simplified version. So if you're interested in diving deeper into this, I highly recommend reading the book. There are 4 elements to this model: capture and collect, organize, review, and do. They're pretty easy to follow and can help improve your productivity when you develop the habit of using it consistently. So let's go through them. We start with capture and collect. This is the process of gathering all of your ideas, commitments, actions established during conversations or meetings with colleagues, paperwork, your email inbox, or inboxes if you happen to manage more than one inbox, on your phone somewhere, those mental lists that aren't written down. It's a complete and thorough brain dump of everything that you have to do, need to do, want to do, should do. Once you've done your brain dump, you now need to organize it all. Because if you operate from the mishmash of everything you've just dumped, it's difficult to separate the top priority actions from those that aren't as high on the priority list. In this system, there are 3 levels of lists: a daily task list, a projects list, and the master list that holds all of your actions. Once everything's been organized, in order to make sure you're managing your progress, staying on track, and doing the right things at the right time, the habit of review comes in. You want to not only review daily, but also weekly to ensure that future things are also getting the attention they require. And then there's do. And the point of do is not to get more stuff done, but to get the right things done. 80% of your output likely comes from focusing on the 20% of your highest value things. There will never be enough hours in a day for you to get absolutely everything done, so you need to be ruthless about where you're going to spend your limited time. It's time to acknowledge that we're no longer capable of getting it all finished. Just think back to a moment in your working life where there was nothing more possible to do in a day. It's likely not in recent years, is it? Now, it's important to stay on top of all 4 elements, because not enough capture and collect leads to feelings of overwhelm when new stuff comes in, and uncertainty about what you really should be working on, and feeling stressed about stuff that you might be forgetting to do. Not enough organization? Well, you may end up having a lack of clarity about how long things might take or what your highest priority is, an unrealistic impression of what's really on your plate, and then end up overcommitting to stuff. Not enough review leaves you feeling unsure that you really are on top of your work. You may have a lack of perspective and stress that leads to inefficiency, a sense of panic, and you end up working in a reactive rather than a proactive way. And not enough do. The work piles up and it's not getting done. And because it's overwhelming, you resist the doing and you spend more time doing less important stuff, also known as procrastination. What the CORD system does is highlight how we need to operate in 2 different modes every day: boss mode and worker mode. In any knowledge work job, you're playing 2 roles at the same time. You're simultaneously the boss and the worker. And what level of attention do you need when you're engaging in any of these 4 elements? There are exceptions, but it looks a little like this. What this table shows us is the boss mode of our work, organize and review, requires the largest part of our effective and proactive attention. Henry Ford once said that thinking is the hardest work there is, which is the probable reason so few engage in it. When it comes to using this model to structure your work, this is a pretty good guide to use. So now we're going to do some exercises using the CORD model as a way of practice and to start building your planning muscle. The first exercise can be found on page 13. You'll start with making a list of all of your collection points, as in, where does all the stuff, or the work, come from? You'll use the left list, My Collection Points, to capture all of your current collection points. Once you've done a thorough inventory of your collection points, use the list on the right and ask yourself if you can reduce the amount of collection points. Can you combine anything? Can you eliminate something? Keep in mind that you have to check and empty every single one of those collection points on a regular basis in order to stay on top of everything. If your goal is to simplify how you work or work smarter, reducing the number of places you need to review is key to being successful at it. Here are some samples of collection points. Now pause this presentation and work through this exercise. Once you've completed it, be sure to resume this presentation. Now let's practice capture and collect on page 14. This next part is going to entail a few steps. Think about all the things that you know need to get done. What projects and to-dos are currently waiting for your attention? Write them down. What does your mental to-do list look like? Are there niggly things floating around? Write them down. Include home and personal things too, so if something pops up for you, write it down. Every stress, every creative idea that tells you that something needs to be done, write it down. Empty your head. Now I've given you plenty of space to work, and you may want to split your brain dump between home and work. Now remember, this is a brain dump. Don't worry about organizing it at this point. And also, don't concern yourself with the category column right now. That'll come into play in the next exercise. Pause this presentation again and work through this exercise. Once you've completed it, resume this presentation to continue. Let's look at organizing your list. I mentioned earlier that there are basically 3 lists: your projects list, daily to-do list, and your master list. This exercise, you're going to primarily focus on organizing the master list and separating out your projects. I want to clarify what projects are, because one thing I see over and over is the mistake of putting a project as a to-do. And then every time you look at that to-do, you feel overwhelmed because instinctively you know it's not that simple to do. A project is anything that requires more than a couple of action steps to complete it, regardless of how big or small. Let's say you're shopping for a new vehicle. You may put that down as a to-do, but in actuality, it's really a project because there's a range of actions involved in shopping for a new vehicle. Things like researching on the web, test driving vehicles, tracking features and prices. It's not a 1 or 2 step action. Plus, it's going to take a whole bunch of time to get it done. It's not going to get done in one sitting. So have a quick look at the list you've just created on page 14. And if there's anything you put there that you know to be a project, write the word project beside it in the category column. Once you've done that, then you're going to create or structure how you want to organize your master list. Break it down into categories that make sense to you. Now here's some examples just to get your brain juices flowing. Places. So these would be things like home, or if you're out and about, calls that you need to make, or other office because maybe you work from multiple office sites, or other job if you happen to do stuff on the side. Attention. You may want to break it down using your attention levels to sort and organize your actions. People and conversations. Sort by people. This may be useful if you're responsible for answering to more than one manager, or maybe it's an assistant that you have. You can make a list of everything you need to discuss with them in one sitting. The waiting for list. These would be for things like, an example might be a sales inquiry. John said he'd get back to me by the 2nd week of December. Or an outstanding payment. You're waiting on an expense claim from a client. Even personal reminders. Maybe you're waiting on something that's being mailed at a future time. Someday maybe. These are good ideas, but realistically, you just don't have the time right now, and they're probably not deadline or time driven. These are things that you're not doing now, but you need to keep these items away from your master list. Keep them in a separate list somewhere so that you can relax and know that they won't be forgotten. And clients. Does it make sense for you to organize some tasks specific to clients? What categories will make most sense to you? And how can you structure your current task system to incorporate categories? Always remember my system of KISS. Keep it super simple. If you make it too complicated, you'll soon get overwhelmed and stop using it. You want broad categories that can accommodate several types, but not so broad that your list is just one long list with no organization or structure to it. I've provided some line space for you, but be creative. Cross things out, draw arrows, whatever you need to do until you have it looking as close as possible to what will ideally work for you. Once that's completed and you're feeling pretty good about it, then use those categories and the list on page 14 in the category column. Write the appropriate category beside each item. If there's anything in these exercises that come up for you, add them to your learning journal. Now, one last point before you end this presentation to work on the organize activity. Where and how you manage your lists varies between people. Some like spreadsheets. I like to use a Word document using the table function. Some love technology and apps, and others, they still love good old-fashioned paper and pen, which is my other go-to. Regardless of your preference, the most important thing is that you keep it up to date and review it often. Without regular review and culling, your list will become unmanageable. So after completing these exercises, the next step is to read the document titled My Daily and Weekly Checklists, which you'll find in the course content.